Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. So great to have you here. And today I'm talking about a distracted or disengaged audience. Do you find that when you speak, your audience looks bored? They're looking around the room, they're fiddling with their phone, they're fiddling with papers, they're whispering to the person next to them, they're fidgeting in some way. It's very distracting as a speaker, actually. But there's many reasons why people might disengage when you speak, but I want to talk about a very common reason today why this might be happening. And before I continue, if you are enjoying my videos and my channel, please do like, share, and subscribe. It makes such a difference. I'm so appreciative for you all for supporting my videos and supporting my channel. So what is one of the main causes for a distracted or disengaged audience? And that is the excessive use of fillers. And fillers are essentially words, sounds, or phrases that we use to pad out sentences. Now, we all use them to a greater or lesser extent. We all use them. I use them. Everyone I know uses them. And it's kind of more acceptable and almost the norm in casual conversations. But when you are excessively using them in a professional setting, in a public speaking setting, it's really doing you a disservice, because not only does it not convey confidence, but it also really undermines your credibility as a speaker. And so consciously or unconsciously, your audience is not going to stay engaged, however great your content is, because it's littered with all of these fillers. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what fillers are, the types of fillers that are most common, why we use them, but also, more importantly, what you can do if you are aware that you're someone that excessively uses fillers. So as I said, there's three types of fillers. There's sounds, there's words, and there's phrases. And you will probably have your go-to fillers. I have my own, which I've become more and more aware of since watching my videos back every week. But you want to start to become aware, because if nothing else, even if you can start to mix it up a little bit, that would make a huge difference, because we tend to have our go-to vocabulary, our go-to fillers when we speak. We have the words that we like using, and you want to start to try and mix it up and use as much variety as possible as a speaker in every sense, not only in the words that you choose, but in the delivery, in the pitch, and the dynamics. Obviously, it's got to make sense with what you're saying, and I'm just going to randomly throw random words in, or randomly start raising your pitch or dropping your pitch. But variety is really the goal as a really powerful public speaker. So filler sounds really common. Things like oh, that type of thing. So we all use them. I probably would say I use out of those the most if I'm thinking while using a filler. I'd be like, so that's my personal favorite. Then we've got filler phrases, which can be things like, you know, do you know what I mean? You see, I guess, I suppose. And then finally, filler words. Again, we're going to have our favorites here. Could be things like, well, so, right. That's a really common one I find in when I'm listening to podcasts. People are talking to each other and they're almost seeking validation for what they've just said. So they'll say a statement and then they'll go, right. And again, when it's overused, it's like you don't really trust what you're saying. Could also be things like basically, probably, hopefully, actually. So you can see there's quite a lot, but it's really almost like a vocal tick. It's something that is not consciously being used, and it's not adding any value. I think that's the main point with these filler sounds. They add absolutely no value and meaning to your sentence, i.e. you could remove them from your sentence and the sentence would still make total sense. So that's kind of how you know, are these actually adding any value? Are these fillers, as the name suggests, or are these actually adding value to my sentences? So as mentioned already, they don't really suggest confidence in you as a speaker and what you're talking about. So that's a big reason particularly in a professional setting, we want to bring our best foot forward or our best voice forward. So one of the main reasons we want to try and eliminate the excessive use of them is because we're never going to make the greatest impact when we speak. We are suggesting, consciously or unconsciously, uncertainty, hesitation, maybe a lack of understanding, a lack of preparation in what we're saying. So we're not really going to have the conviction behind our words because we're too busy umming and ahhing and so and well and you know what I'm meaning between the sentences and the words that we're saying. As mentioned at the top of this video, it's also really distracting when someone is constantly using fillers when they're speaking. And actually, all we then start to notice is the fillers, and we stop even listening to what they're saying, which is obviously not what you want. You want people to be listening to your content. So if you are littering your speech with these fillers, most likely your audience will begin to switch off. Whether they're conscious of it or not is another matter. They may not be thinking, she's just filling her speech with fillers, this is really annoying. They may not be aware of it, but there'll be something in them unconsciously that's like, I'm not really feeling it with this speaker, because they won't necessarily know, but they're not going to feel that conviction and that confidence in what you're saying. The other big part of this, and I think this is a really important part of public speaking, is if you are constantly using fillers in an excessive way, then it means you're in your head. Because when we're using fillers, what we're really doing is we're buying ourselves some time to think. And it means we're in our head, we're analyzing, we're processing, we're thinking, what on earth do I say next? Versus when we're speaking from our heart, we're speaking with that fluency, then we are in a much better position to connect to our audience than when we're thinking, overthinking, and analyzing what we're saying. So why do we use them? So I think there's three kind of main reasons why we use them. First of all, they're just so habitual. Now, remembering that we learn to speak by mimicking those around us, and we're also social creatures. So we tend to acclimate to the people around us. Whoever you, I think they say it's the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if everyone around you is going, so basically, you're probably going to start using those fillers, just because consciously or unconsciously, we want to be part of the group. So we're going to do, particularly with our language, we're going to use our language in a way that helps us to fit in that group. So first of all, maybe even start to become aware of the people around you and what fillers do they use, because most likely you will be using similar fillers. The second one is, and this is again perfectly acceptable in a casual conversation, but it tends to ease tension or soften the blow in a way for a difficult conversation. It's like we're cushioning our words with the fillers. So if you are needing to have a really difficult conversation with your partner or your child or someone in your personal life, you're probably going to, look, I really need to talk to you about something. And there's probably going to be a bit of softening and cushioning the blow before you come out with actually what you want to say. Now, that's really, really common. So we use these often to help ourselves cope with challenging conversations. We also use them often to help us to express abstract ideas or challenging ideas, things that perhaps we struggle to put language to it. And there are concepts out there that we might, depending on what we do for a living or what we like, what we're interested in, but there are going to be things that we talk about that perhaps don't have concrete language to express it. So we find ourselves perhaps using fillers as a way to kind of navigate more abstract ideas. And finally, and probably one of the most common uses, and what I've already mentioned, is it buys us some time. And if we are in a situation, a professional situation, and we can't think of the next word, we can't think of our idea, someone's asked us a question and we don't quite know what to say, umming and ahhing gives us that space. We're saying to the person, I'm thinking, I just haven't thought of the answer yet. So it's sort of suggesting to the people that we're talking to that we're not ready, to be interrupted, and we still have more to say. And I think that's often one of our biggest fears. If we don't use fillers, then we're going to be interrupted. And also this idea, when we are thinking about what to say, we're buying ourselves some time, we might be trying to think of the right word. And there could be lots of reasons for that kind of brain fog. We might be tired, we might be stressed, we might just be feeling very, very nervous or anxious. We also just might not be prepared. We might be asked a question that we weren't expecting. We might have to present something that we weren't expecting. And so we don't have the fluency in the topic that we're talking about. So again, a lot of this comes back to preparation as well, that the more prepared you can be, the better, because that's another reason why we tend to hesitate and use fillers, because we're trying to think of something to say. But just start to become aware when you are using fillers. What do you think are the reasons that you are using them? Is it because you can't think of the words to say? Is it because it's a difficult conversation? Is it because just everyone around you is saying these words? Just start to notice, and perhaps there's a little bit of all of them. But again, a lot of this is about awareness, because most of the time, this is very habitual and we have absolutely no idea we're doing it. So this brings me on to the 5 ways to start to eliminate excessive use of fillers, remembering that we're always going to use them, and there's nothing wrong with using them to some extent. It's an excessive use where it becomes distracting, and actually all your audience is focusing on are your fillers versus actually what you're saying. So the first one is awareness, and I've mentioned this already, but just start to become aware. What are your go-to fillers, whether it's words, sounds, or phrases? Because I guarantee you will use fillers. It's just which ones do you use? And are you excessively using them, or are you just using them sporadically? There's nothing wrong with using them. We just don't want an excessive use of them, particularly in a professional environment. A really good way to know whether you use them or not in a professional environment is to record yourself. And a lot of people, particularly when I work privately with clients, they really don't want to listen to a recording of themselves, but it really is the only way you learn. I listen to myself back on these videos, partly because I'm editing them anyway, but also because I want to actually see the language that I use and how I come across in my videos, because ultimately that's the only way I can improve, if I'm actually watching myself back, so I can see what I actually do and the words that I choose and the fillers that I end up using. The next one, I've also sort of mentioned this as well, preparation. That's not only preparing, whether it's a topic that you're going to be talking about, or you're presenting an idea or a concept, so you're across the detail, but it's also preparing your body, your mind, and your voice. Really important. And so many professionals do not prepare their body, their mind, and their voice, and they just go into something and wing it. If you're not sure what to do, I've got loads of videos on this, but you want to be doing a short vocal warm-up. You want to be getting a bit of movement through your body. You want to be getting the breath moving from that deeper place. The breath is also going to help you not only power your voice more effectively, but it's going to help to calm your nervous system. So in those moments where you're feeling perhaps anxious and you can't think of what to say, taking some deep belly breaths will calm your nervous system and allow you to think more clearly. Because when we're breathing from that high, shallow place, we're in that fight or flight place, we can't think clearly. We're not going to be able to think of the right word to say, and we're going to then overuse fillers. So if we can deepen the breath, we can actually bring more clarity to our mind. So lots and lots of reasons. Again, I've talked about this in other videos, so I'm not going to spend it here, but I do have a handout on preparing your voice for speaking, which includes body, breath, sound, and speech. And I'll put the link below. It's a free handout you can download and just go through that. If you don't know what else to do and you don't want to watch any other videos, just download the handout and then you'll have it all in one document. Now, this next one is perhaps one you're not going to be expecting me to say, and this is expand your vocabulary. And it's one of those things that, as humans that go through life, we are creatures of comfort, and we tend to use the same words day in, day out. I mean, the English language is vast, and most of us use a very, very, very small proportion of vocabulary that's actually possible. So my challenge to you is to try and learn a few new words each week and start to try and bring them into your speaking, because I guarantee you probably use the same words all the time. Now, then that becomes a challenge when you are in a situation and you can't think of the right word. If you're only drawing from a very small pool of words, that's going to be more stressful. So start to learn a few new words each week. Something very interesting, Caroline Goyder talks about this, who's a speech coach in the UK. She talks about how great speakers are prolific readers and love words. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. If you listen to any great speaker, anyone that you perceive to be a great speaker, who's really fluent, who's really articulate, I guarantee that they read a lot and they've just got a wealth of vocabulary to access. And that's really what makes you more engaging as well, because again, we switch off. It's all about variety. If you're using the same words all the time in your speaking, you're going to get bored. Your audience is going to get bored. So we're also painting with words when we speak. We're painting an image for our audience. So if we can use different language, different vocabulary, it's going to make it more interesting. But of course, you can't do that if your vocabulary is very limited. So see if you can learn a few new words each week and try and bring them into your speaking. Obviously, make sure they make sense with what you're saying. Number 4, probably the most important, is you've got to get comfortable with silence. So pausing is often the advice given for people when they can't think of a word to say. So rather than umming and ahhing, just don't say anything, just pause. Now that is a challenge for most of us because we're very uncomfortable with silence. So start to become aware of, just in your day-to-day life, are you uncomfortable with silence? Are you someone that has to have music on, the radio on? You have to have the TV on in the background. If there's someone in the room, do you always have to be speaking to that person? Just start to notice, or are you comfortable with being in silence yourself, sitting with someone in silence? I'm not talking about maybe your husband of 50 years, but people that you don't know very well. Do you feel like you have to speak? And just start to notice what comes up for you when you do sit in silence. Because I guarantee if you're uncomfortable with silence in your day-to-day life, you're going to be even more uncomfortable with silence when you're presenting. And this is the best advice I can give you, other than the other things I've mentioned, is become comfortable with silence and pausing. It's going to feel worse for you, but I guarantee your audience is going to appreciate the space between your words. So it will bring things up for you, though, guaranteed. You know, what will people think? They'll think I don't know what I'm saying. She doesn't know what she's doing, etc., etc. But just start to bring that to consciousness and then be okay with it. And then number 5, which is kind of the umbrella over all of this, is really to record yourself. So, you know, don't take my word for it. What may feel like a lifetime of silence for you is probably only 2 or 3 seconds for your audience. And I guarantee if you listen back with that 2 to 3 second silence while you're trying to think of what to say, your audience will actually appreciate that silence. It's us that are uncomfortable with the silence. So that is the biggest thing. And now, apart from, regardless of whether you are a fluent speaker or not, obviously pausing is really important when you're speaking anyway. But if you are someone that struggles with excessive use of fillers, you have to become comfortable with silence. But coming back to number 1, you've got to be aware of what you're doing in the first place, and you've got to be willing to record yourself and listen back. So record yourself at the start, record yourself to see what you're doing, what fillers you're using, how much you're using them. Then when you start to do this work a little bit more intentionally, maybe start to learn a few new words, prepare your voice, your mind, your body for your speaking, you start to be more deliberate with the silence and the pauses, then record yourself and listen back, because I guarantee it's going to sound infinitely more engaging than the first version. So thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in learning more about my private voice coaching, you can schedule a private voice discovery call with me for 30 minutes. I'll put the link below. There's more information on my website. As I mentioned also earlier, I have a free voice prep download, which I will put the link below as well, which will give you some specific exercises to go through to prepare your voice for speaking. You don't have to do it all, but just start to do something each day. So thank you so much, and I will see you on my next video.